Some homeowners out here are so sure it's still 2022 that they're pricing themselves into short sales. That's the trap I'm breaking down today, because selling like it's 2022 is killing deals in 2026. I'm Hernandez, and after hundreds of transactions at Cape Coral, Fort Myers, and Lehigh Acres, I know where these deals fall apart. Price it wrong on day one, and you'll lose more than you think. So stay with me to avoid leaving even a penny on the table. Let me take you back for a second, because I get why sellers are stuck there in 2022. Back then, you could list a messy house, skip the repairs, and have offers stacked up by Sunday night. Cape Coral was the hottest housing market in the whole country that year. I mean, it was a fever dream, and everybody caught it. But that market's gone. There's a lot more homes for sale in Lee County now, so buyers can be picky, and they are. Homes are taking longer too, like 60 to 80 days for a lot of listings before they sell. I know that feels slow if you're expecting a weekend, but that's just normal now. You gotta be patient in 2026. So what happens to the sellers who fight it? Their listing goes stale, starts collecting dust, and buyers start thinking something's wrong with the house, even when there isn't. And later, when we get into flood insurance and those Cape Coral utility assessments, you'll see there's a whole other layer of stuff that kills these listings. But let me explain more about this gap in expectation and reality by the sellers. So by the time they finally drop the price, they've lost more than if they just priced it right from the jump. I've watched this play out a million times. A seller sure the old number still works, so they price 10 or 50% over the comps and dig in. A couple months later, after 2 price drops and a listing nobody wants to touch, they walk away with less than they have gotten, pricing it right from the start. Time kills deals in a market like this. And some families are dealing with something even harder. A few bought right at the peak, and now they need to sell, but they owe more than the market will give them. It's brutal, guys, and it's the best reminder I know that real estate is a long game. When you buy, you can't just think about today. You gotta think about whether you could hold that home for 5 or 7 years if you had to. The 2022 market made people forget that. Now, that shift from 2022 thinking to 2026 reality, it shows up nowhere more than how you put a number on your house. Right now, a typical Cape Coral home is selling somewhere in the low to mid 300s, and that's not a crash. It's the market resetting after all the craziness, and it's been pretty flat there. Buyers now are doing more math than any buyers I've worked with. They're running insurance, flood, utility assessments, HOA fees, all of it at once, on top of the mortgage, which is all they used to research before. So when you list 10% over the comps, it adds up wrong, and they scroll right past your house on Zillow. Homes here are closing at about 95 to 97% of list price. So that tells you buyers are negotiating. The seller who lists high ends up taking that discount anyway, just after burning weeks on the market. Now, if you got time to wait, sure, you can test the market, but if you need to sell now, you price it accordingly. And I'll be straight with you, I never suggest overpricing. It doesn't matter what the market's doing or what that friend of a friend told you the real estate agent cousin is doing. Even back when it was hot, overpricing could cost you money. Some people had to do price cuts even back in 2022. If you'd price at fair market value while people were throwing offers over asking, you'd probably walk away with more than the guy who listed high and still got multiple offers. Pricing right is the fastest way to put more money in your pocket. There's no way around it. And some areas hold up better than others. Parts of Fort Myers, certain pockets of Lehigh Acres, they still got steady demand. But even there, you can't just throw a big number at the wall and expect it to stick. It'll sit right down after a few weeks with no showings. The comps still rule, no matter your zip code. Price is only half of it though. Out here, there's 2 costs sitting under the surface that can sink a perfectly priced home. Real quick, before we move on, if you're sitting on a Southwest Florida home and wondering what it's worth today, that's what I do every day out here. My contact info is in the description below. And you could grab a free home valuation by scanning the QR code on your screen right now, no strings attached. Alright, now let's get back to it. We're past the days of buyers waiving inspections and ignoring the big costs. Buyers hold the power now, and they know all about flood insurance and those pending utility assessments. This stuff is the baseline now. For a typical Cape Coral home, you're looking at homeowners insurance somewhere in the $3,000 to $7,000 range a year, and waterfront can climb way past that. So a buyer who gets a quote they weren't expecting either walks or comes back hard on price. On the other side of the table, if you're selling, be the seller who brings up that conversation. Have your elevation certificate ready and show buyers upfront what their insurance is gonna run. That kind of honesty gives them confidence because they know what they're walking into. Matters most on older homes that came before the modern elevation codes. Then there's the one that's pure Cape Coral, the utilities assessments. The city's been running the utilities extension project for years, bringing city water, sewer, and reclaimed irrigation to areas that were on well and septic, and that bill's tied to the property, so it follows the house. Hold on to this, because when we wrap up on your reading your local comps, this is the kind of thing that separates one street from the next. But let me tell you about these utilities assessments first. These can run into the thousands, and a buyer who finds a big balance after going under contract will come back on price or just walk. A house can be priced perfect and still lose the buyer the second they find finding $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 plus assessment nobody told them about. So if you're selling in Cape Coral, get that number before you list. The city's got a tool where you look up any address and see the exact balance. I'll leave that down in the description. After that, figure out how you want to handle it. Pay it off and market it as assessments paid in full, offer a credit at closing, or price for it. Either way, put it on the table. Being upfront is the fastest way to the closing table. Once your price and your costs are honest, the last thing between you and the closing table is how you handle the back and forth. A lot of sellers are still treating any offer under list like a personal insult, and it's costing them. In Fort Myers, most homes are selling below list price, so buyers expect to ask for something, and the seller, who won't budge on anything, ends up giving the most in the end by slashing the price after months of sitting. But you don't have to drop your price to close. The best tools right now are the ones that help the buyer's monthly payment without gutting what you walk away with. The one most sellers have never heard of is a 2-1 rate buy down. Instead of dropping your price 20 grand, you put money in at closing to knock down the buyer's interest rate for a bit. Year 1, they pay 2 points below their rate. Year 2, 1 point below. Year 3 on, it's the normal rate. So on a home in the high 300s, that buy down can save the buyer a few $100 a month that first year. That can make that yes come out a lot easier. And the cost to you is around $9,000, way less than the big price cut you'd make after 90 days anyway. You spend less, the buyer saves every month, everybody wins. Closing cost credits work the same way. Covering some of the buyer's cash to close can save a deal without touching your price. And I'll be straight with you, a lot of sellers out here are still being unrealistic, more than most of us would want. But the ones getting to the closing table get something simple. Getting there with a motivated buyer is a win, even if it takes a little something that costs you less than you feared. Buyers want to feel like they won something. Give them that, and you close faster than the guy drawing a line in the sand over a small repair. All of this only works if you're measuring against the right thing, and that's where most sellers are looking in the wrong place. Now, the national news loves to scream about crashes and booms. For a decision like this, that's just noise. Real estate is local, and out here, it's block by block. Cape Coral waterfront is its own world. Golf access homes with no bridges, spots in the yacht club or Bimini Basin, those run on totally different demand than an inland dry lot. But even waterfront sellers aren't safe from overpricing. Some of those luxury spots are seeing more than half their listings come back on the market because they priced too high to move the first time. Then there's Lehigh Acres, which is one of the smartest stories in this whole market. Sellers there are barely negotiating, closing within a few percent of their asking price. Not because the homes are better, but because their heads and prices are in 2026. And that's the whole lesson for Cape Coral and Fort Myers sellers, sitting right there in one spot. So before you make any big decision, look at your zip code, your neighborhood, and what your exact kind of home sold for in the last 60 days. If you're selling a 3-bed, 2-bath on a dry lot in Lehigh, you look at what those sold for, not a waterfront home in Cape Harbor, not the national number, your comps. That's your number. The 2022 market isn't coming back, and every day you wait for it is a day it takes money off your table. The sellers winning right now get the market they're in. So if you're thinking about selling and you want an honest read on what your home will do, email me at german@swflhouses.com, and I'll put together a straight assessment for your property and your street. No fantasy numbers, just what it takes to get you sold. And do you think every home in Southwest Florida is struggling to sell? Not even close. Click the next video to see which homes buyers are avoiding and which ones are getting snapped up. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.